In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know about the new character Mashle, or Buff Boy in the in-game name. He's a new limited raid character and he has his own limited raid where you can drop the accessory Green Puff as well, a pretty bad accessory, and the character Mashle. There are two limited raids currently, both the Buff Boy raid and the Warlord raid, so who's the better character to get? Mashle or Mihawk? Let's see. So I'm going to compare him just like I did with Kurumi and Guts. So with bad stuff, with okay stuff, with the best stuff in both raids and dimensions and boss rush, just to see how good they are and when you should get Mashle and where you should use Mashle and where you should use someone else. His moves. His first ability has less damage than Mihawk's ability with the same cooldown and the same energy gain. So the first ability is just a worse first move of Mihawk's. Second ability is slightly lower damage as well, a bit worse energy gain, but it has better cooldown, so I consider it pretty equal to Mihawk's ability. And the third ability of Mashle is pretty good. It gives you a speed boost, and the big thing is that it's actually resets the cooldown of the first and second abilities, so you can deal more damage with that. It's a slightly weaker damage than the Mihawk's ability otherwise, but it does reset the first and second ability. The reason why Mashle is so good is because of his fourth ability. It provides him with 50% more crit chance for 4 seconds. It's slightly weaker than Mihawk's ability, but otherwise good energy gain, good cooldown. It's really fast, that's why. You can use it and then use another ability instantly afterwards. That's why it's so good. His assist is okay, 10% more crit chance and the same damage than Mihawk, so assist-wise, Mashle is better than Mihawk though. Okay, so the first test I'm going to show you is a raid test where basically you're a beginner, you don't have any good stuff. So I used common cards with no substats, I used a pet like Akaza, and I used an accessory which is really bad. I used a fruit that's sand, and I didn't use any assists. So let's see who is better. Both Mashle and Mihawk has an ability that resets cooldowns, which is really important if you do not have a good pet, because then if you don't have a good pet, there's nothing that's gonna decrease your cooldowns of your skills meanwhile you're playing the raid, which is really good to have, because then you can just spam your abilities all the time. So that's why Mashle and Mihawk are pretty good characters. They have an ability that makes you able to spam abilities much more. So that's good. The third ability of Mashle is pretty good. The Mihawk's ability might be even better because it has more damage and is faster than Mashle's third ability. But Mashle has a good fourth ability. The fourth ability is instant. You can use more moves afterwards. It gives you 50% more crit chance, which is really good if you don't have any crit chance. From 0 to 50% is really good. So he can spam his moves, and he can spam his moves more often just because slightly better cooldowns and that the fourth ability is not as slow. It's actually really fast. It's one of the best fourth abilities in the game almost. Mihawk has a very similar kit. The only big difference is that he has slightly more damage on his moves, but this fourth ability does not have the 50% critical chance buff, and he does not have a quick fourth ability. The fourth ability is really slow. It takes such a long time to actually finish, so you can't spam as much. Then I tried a raid where they have very good items, very good gear, so you had mythic cards instead. Well, I do have 106 cards instead of 113, but as you can see on the main attack, they're about the same. I used 5 out of 5 mythic cards. I used the ODM gear. I think I used, where is it? This one with a Garapet, Reaper Fruits, and Levi and Kirito assists. Let's see who's better. So here, you had a pet where you can decrease your cooldowns. Then, energy gain matters a lot, and quickness of moves. And like I said before, where Mashle was better with bad stuff, Mashle has a very quick fourth ability, which is so beneficial to him in this test. Then he can use this fourth ability very efficiently and reset the Garapet a lot of times to just do more damage. And that's basically the reason why Mashle is also better in this test. He has slightly worse damage on his moves, but he can spam them much more often, and he has this 50% crit chance for a few seconds that's gonna deal more damage than Mihawk. Mihawk is by no means a bad character, and he's actually one of the better raid characters, better than Sukuna, the previous raid character as well. But Mihawk just has such a slow fourth ability that his energy gain is not as fast as Mash's, just because the fourth ability of Mash is really good, with energy gain and quickness. The last raid test I did was with the meta gear, so I used the best cards, well 5 out of 5 cards. I used a Claymore, this one right here. I used the best fruits, used the best pets. I used the best of everything, best assists as well. And I also used celestial traits. So yeah, let's see who's better. In this test, everyone has more critical chance, meaning the critical chance buff you get from Mash is going to be slightly worse relatively. Because if you go from 0 to 50%, that's much better than going from 50 to 100%. It's a much larger difference. So the critical chance you get from Mash's abilities or fourth ability is not as huge, but it's still really good. It's still really good. And in general, with the meta gear and everything, you just see how much better Mash is just because you can activate his pets much more often than Mihawk. And yeah, Mihawk is strong, he has good energy gain, but the thing that's dragging him down all the time, especially now when you have good cooldown reduction, is just having a slow ability. An ability where you can't use another ability fast is just not a good ability, especially if you need to spam. Yeah, it's not good. That's why Mash is actually better than Mihawk than in raids, even though the most of the community says that Mihawk is better than Mash. Mash is actually better than Mihawk. If you have good stuff, if you have bad stuff, if you have meta stuff. Yeah, don't listen to the community without having proof, just Mash is better. Now, they are actually really similar in damage, because in 10 seconds, they deal about the same damage. In this test, I tried them both in 10 seconds to see how much damage they could deal, and Mash actually deals slightly more damage, but it's insignificant. But it's just because the time hasn't set in. He needs to play for a longer time to actually get that full damage. So in a long time raid, Mash is actually gonna beat Mihawk, but in like a shorter game mode, they're very, very equal. And that's why in boss rush, they're also really equal. Like you can see in the burst test where you could only damage for 10 seconds, Mash and Mihawk were really, really equal. In raids, Mash was actually beating Mihawk. And in boss rush, they're really similar, but Mash beats Mihawk by a bit. And that's because he has just gotten some of the time to actually catch up in damage, because the longer the raid goes, the more damage Mash is gonna get, because Mash is actually better. So yeah, that's one thing you gotta keep in mind, that in a full raid, he's gonna be better, but just burst damage, Mihawk might be better because his damage is actually stronger than Mash's damage in terms of skill versus skill. So the first ability of Mash is worse than the first ability of Mihawk in terms of damage. That's something you have to keep in mind. But otherwise, in a long-term raid, Mash is going to catch up and has more damage than that. Now, to the final tests, we have Dimension, and we have 3 Dimension tests. One being the speedrun test, and this is just a test to see when they can one-shot basically any enemy, including the bosses, how fast they can do dimensions. Now, Mash does not have a dash move. He does have a speed boost, kinda, but it's nowhere near enough to just speed through a dimension. He's not good in dimensions. He does not have a dash. He does not have a 5th ability to compensate for that with a speed boost or something. He doesn't have a good speed boost even. He's just very slow in dimensions, and you just gotta like dash through the dimension if you want to speedrun. So Mihawk is actually beating Mash in dimensions here on the speedrun aspect, because Mihawk has a dash that Mash does not. Even if the dash is not good, having a dash is very important to a character if you want to use them for dimensions, especially if you want to do it fast. That's why Mihawk is better than Mash at speedrunning. When it comes to a dimension where it's very fair, just having some, it's not very hard to kill them, because you don't one-shot all of them. Just a regular dimension, you don't play a really hard one, you don't play a really easy one. It's more like Mash still struggles, even though Mihawk doesn't speed through the whole dimension, one-shotting everything and just using his dash to get along. Just having a dash and more damage on the individual skills is really good to have in Dimensions, so Mash just doesn't seem to be a Dimension character. He doesn't have a dash, he doesn't have the damage to keep up with the mobs unless you use a lot of abilities, which is not what you want to do in Dimensions. In Dimensions you want to one-shot enemies with as few abilities as possible, preferably one. So Mihawk is actually better than Mash in regular Dimensions as well, because Mihawk has pretty good damage, a decent dash, and okay AoE to just kill all enemies. Now, in the one card test, I expected Mash to be doing a bit better, but no. Mash actually did even worse than Mihawk in one card dimension, where I used just one card instead of 3 cards. So basically, the mobs were really hard to kill, and since Mihawk has more damage on the skills than Mash does, Mihawk struggles much less. Sure, Mash does have more boss damage while using a lot of skills because you can just reset them, but when it's individual mobs that you need to kill with like one ability, then Mash just falls off. So in conclusion, Mihawk is better than Mash in Dimensions, and there's nothing to do about it. He has better skills for Dimensions, and he has a dash. Well, Mash doesn't have anything good for Dimensions, really. So, yeah. In conclusion, Mash is a better raid character, and Mihawk is a better Dimension character. Now, if I were to give you one character to get, I would actually recommend you getting Mash, just because Mash is better in raids and still viable in Dimensions, and Mihawk isn't really good in Dimensions in general anyway. You can definitely get a better Dimension character for that. And Mash is just a pretty okay character for raids anyway. So Mash is just better in general. He has more damage, okay. That's why. But if you have the time to get 2 characters in the span of like 2 months, then Mihawk is actually better to get, just because Mihawk is actually going away in 36 days, while Mash is going away in 78 days. Meaning, Mihawk is going to go away forever, much earlier than Mash is gonna. So if you want to get the limited character while he's still here, get Mihawk. Otherwise, if you only have time to get one anyway, then I would recommend you getting Mash, because Mash is actually better. And I didn't know that. I thought that Mihawk was better than Mash prior to making this video, because that's what everyone in the community has been saying. And that's why I still dislike the community a bit. Every time a new character comes out, people don't test them, and they just say what they think about the character. And then when people, pros, for example like me, post something telling the truth when testing the characters, saying that, oh no, it's false what you guys are saying, then people change their minds. So yeah, try to test your characters out before just buying a character because someone said so. Yeah, that's all I have to say for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Try to get Mash or Mihawk if you want to get both of them. Get Mihawk first. But yeah, Mash is pretty good. Try to get Mash. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one.